The show is called Insight with psychic medium Christopher George. It's all about psychic readings. I welcome my listeners to call in for a free reading. Just remember, don't ask me a question that you really don't want the answer to. I'll give it to you the way the spirits give it to me. Straightforward and real. The first Friday of every month. Insight, 11 to midnight.
Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio. The Church of Babies.
It was face down and was hiding from his father. And the big, long, elongated red the yards of people, apparently and historically, opposed to secret society. Messing it up. Welcome back, everybody. We had a little technical difficulty, not sure what it was, but we're going to keep on rocking and rolling. And now my dog's trying to bark, so that's just great. It's just one of those coyote nights, I guess. So, all right.
That's appropriate.
Yeah, definitely. Del, I was saying that you got some great blurbs on here. Peter Coyote, the actor, Allen Ginsberg, Terrence McKenna. And one of the things that Peter Coyote says about your book is Dale Pendle's remarkable book will make it impossible to ever again underestimate the most unprepossessing plant. This compendium of how to get high by eating your lawn ethological data is mind-boggling, useful, and serves as a fine end run around the guardians of official consciousness. So I guess my question is...
can you smoke your lawn?
Yeah, can I smoke my lawn?
Well, there's some possibility. It depends on what kind of grass it is, There are certain species that a number of ethnobotanists have found, certain species of plants like orchard grass, phalaris. Certain strains are just strong enough to smoke, yeah.
Wow, so is that like a DMT thing or what?
Yeah, it's it has tryptamines in it, dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and 5-methoxytryptamine. So, when your dad says go out and mow the lawn, you could, put your pipe in your back pocket and, do half of it and put some in your pipe and have fun with the rest.
Nice. So is there anything, as far as, what is your background with plants? How did that come about? What got you so interested into this subject exactly?
I had a placer claim up in the Trinity Mountains in California. There are all these plants around. One of the first things I was interested in was finding botanical sources of DMT, and just wanting to know what all this green stuff around me was, and that led me into studying systematic taxonomy and meeting herbalists and Native American teachers that knew all this great stuff about plants.
And so as far as the trilogy of your books, when did you first write the first book, and when did you start compiling them?
Well, I've been collecting information most of my life, but Pharmacopoeia came out, the first edition came out in 1995. There's a revised and updated edition out now. That's probably what you have. And it was planned, I thought it was just going to be, one book at first, but the project just got too big, so it ended up being 3 books, actually. The second volume, Pharmacodynamics, is mostly about the stimulants, though the pathogens like ecstasy and a few other interesting substances are also in that book. And then the final volume, Pharmacognosis, covers most of the hallucinogens and the nightshades.
So what part of the country are you in, like statewide?
Well, I'm out in California, in the foothills of the Sierras. We've got fires around us, so if, that's why I wanted to be plugged into a landline here in case our electricity goes out, which it might. Summertime is fire season out here.
Yeah, and the way tonight's going, it's a possibility that could happen, so thanks for warning us in advance. But I guess, I'm in Florida, and, I'm familiar with, some plant use, like mushrooms down south. People do those to kind of make you trip, and marijuana. But the problem is where I'm at, they still treat marijuana like it's heroin or cocaine or something around here, like it's crack rock. That's their mentality with marijuana and cannabis in Florida, where I am. It's quite painful. So I'm sure things are a little in California as far as an openness with those type of drugs, definitely compared to Florida, which I jokingly call redneck California of the South.
Yeah, California has a medical marijuana law, but the federal law, of course, always trumps the state law. And according to the federal law, bizarrely, marijuana is classified as Schedule 1, meaning it, by definition, has no medical use. So that's kind of like us, they get trapped in a killer reasoning because they have placed marijuana in Schedule 1 that by definition means it doesn't have any medical use, despite reams of research now showing the contrary. So that's a big problem. Yeah, states' rights are are not particularly well represented in this instance. Most recently, Homeland Security has decided they have extra time on their hands and have involved themselves in the drug war.
Yeah, it's a mess, most definitely, with that situation. Jerry, you ready you got some questions? Jerry, are you there? Are you conscious?
Yeah, I'm definitely here and aware, so to speak. Actually, I was wondering, what are some of the, like how we're talking about, we're trying to wrap our minds around the reasoning to classify marijuana as the feds do. I was wondering if there's any other common myths that you found were just like, or common conceptions about certain plants that were just untrue besides, the marijuana situation.
Well, there's a general misconception around the word drug to begin with. There's like the pharmaceutical drugs, which are okay, and then everything else is not okay. And so the word drug itself is so loosely defined that you hear news commentators speak of drugs, and even though most of America is taking numerous drugs every day, it's presented as something bizarre and immoral. The Europeans, though their laws can be much as ours in most cases, they don't seem to have this moral issue the way Americans do. That's an interesting question, and I tried to explore some of that. It's kind of scattered through all three books. I refer frequently to the Greek word, which is pharmakon. Now, the pharmakon could be translated either as poison or remedy, or drug. Homer uses it that way. Baneful drugs. And it was conceived as something that had this transgressive power. And so it all depended on use and context, whether it's a poison or a remedy. So that's kind of the concept that I tried to work off of, and trace historical uses, staying with plant sources as much as I could, though not in a fanatical way. And generally the progression through history is psychoactive plants were recognized as a special class of plants and were generally considered sacred in some way, all of them. And then there's been a gradual process of secularization, and we can see this, most clearly with the stimulants, which are so secularized at this point, most people don't even think of them as drugs. And, certainly the most widely used drug in Western culture since the Enlightenment been coffee and tea.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really a speed culture. That's what I was trying to do, was trying to find, in each plant, through a process of immersion and making sure that some of what I wrote was always under the influence of that particular plant, hoping that a signature of the plant would come out through the style of my writing that, would reflect its essence in some way beyond, just what I could explain and say it was. And yeah, the signature of Western culture turns out to match the stimulants. Not so surprising.
So, Dell, when it comes to America and the plants here, what kind of plants are there that are kind of like our the ones that in touch with other forms of consciousness, the ethogens, and I guess like psychedelics? I know we have mushrooms, but I always see these shaman documentaries, and I read books on shamanism, and it seems like all the shamans and medicine men in like the Amazon and, you know, wherever else, Africa, they get all the good drugs. Are there any, you know, what kind of plants are in America that are like this, that are that can be used for a visionary journey, so to speak, or we've been cheated because of our location? I mean, there's just like mushrooms, right? I mean, is there anything?
That was noted by the anthropologist Weston LeBar. That the what we're calling these days entheogenic plants, which is just one kind of power plant. And one of the points that I'm trying to make is that there's different families of plant allies, we could say, plant spirits, if we want to animate them, that come from very different directions. They all affect the mind and put one with other aspects of reality. But, of course, the entheogens, the psychedelics, or as they're called sometimes, the hallucinogens, are so dramatic that sometimes we overlook the subtler properties of some of the other plants. Anyway, to get back to your question, of course, peyote comes from North America, which was one of the first of that class of plants to be investigated before mushrooms. And was known and used in Mexico by people such as the Huichol and the Tarahumara, and late in the 19th century, its use began moving north, and of course now it's the sacrament of the Native American Church. One of the active alkaloids, mescaline, was isolated from it, and of course that's what Aldous Huxley had his first psychedelic experience with. Other than that, in a different classification, a number of tribes out here in the West used datura, a challenging plant, and we have several other species of nightshade, and other plants that we're discovering now containing tryptamines that don't seem to have any record of native use, perhaps because the preparations are complicated, though that didn't stop the peoples in the Amazon from discovering the mix of plants needed to produce the ayahuasca experience. But the old world, old Europe, is perhaps just as bereft of hallucinogenic plants as North America. Those people use nightshades. We have records in Greece of use of mandrake. There's a lost Greek comedy. All we have is a few lines from it and the title, which is Women Drunk on Mandrake.
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen the nightshade and mandrake, like in movies and stuff. You know, of course, it's always seems to revolve around death. What is it considered plant-wise, and what are its attributes as far as what is it, nightshade and mandrake exactly?
Well, I put mandrake and belladonna and henbane, which was added to beers in Europe, in a class that I call Daemonica. Those are the plants that are truly hallucinogenic. The plants usually called hallucinogens, the psychedelic plants, you know, they're not really hallucinogens as such. You know, they alter perception and so forth, but the nightshades like datura, henbane, or mandrake, people see stuff that is not there at all. It's kind of like walking around in a dream. You know, like in a dream, you know, weird things can happen. You know, you see something that's, you know, climbs out of a wall and has 5 eyes, and in the dream you think, oh, that's weird. You know, you walk on into the next room and, you know, do whatever it is you were doing. It's kind of like that.
Interesting. Like lucid dreaming, it sounds like, or something like that.
Yeah, or illucid or something, yeah.
Well, I got one more question, then we'll turn it over to Jerry. Is there anything good in Florida in this tropical region? It doesn't seem like there's anything here that can grow. I even tried to grow pot here and it dies.
Really?
That could just be me.
Oh.
You know of anything else in Florida? It's kind of tropical. I would think there'd be something else growing out here, something nice. I don't think there is.
I would think you'd be able to grow all kinds of things there. I don't know what the legal status of Salvia divinorum is in Florida. That should grow well there. Some states have passed laws against that plant. Maybe Louisiana. Huh.
It's probably illegal here. Now they're busting people for that sage stuff like crazy, and now it's illegal. And then, of course, you had the whole bath salt thing. It seems like that came out of Florida with the whole zombie weird thing that happened. Oh yeah, it's probably illegal here. Everything's illegal.
Yeah, I'm a little out of touch with some of the latest happenings, but I read about it some.
Yeah. All right, Jerry?
Yeah. Actually, I was wondering if you have any experience with San Pedro as well, since we're talking North America plants.
Yeah, that's a That's a South American plant, but it does very well here. It's great in cactus gardens. It's a great landscaping plant. And you can eat it and drink it.
And what kind of effects does that have?
Well, it's a lot like peyote. San Pedro contains mescaline, and it's actually purer. There are fewer secondary alkaloids than you find in peyote. That's a great plant to grow. All the plant nerds always have some San Pedro in their gardens, whether they ever use it or not. It's kind of a mark, you say, oh, look at those San Pedros. Somebody cool must live there. I've got several notes about the care and preparation of that plant. That's in pharmaconosis. I've got a whole chapter on San Pedro, I think.
Oh, very cool. And actually, I was just curious myself about what exactly mescaline does to our body.
Well, because it's an alkaloid, it can sit kind of heavily in the stomach. Some people purge. Not always. It has stimulating effects. It's a little embarrassing. I can't remember all the details of the pharmacology. It does have somatic effects, and is used in small quantities sometimes. Even bits of the San Pedro in small quantities, just as a stimulant. I've heard of people using it for long drives.
Interesting. And then also just another plant too that I've heard. I guess this is from Africa, maybe, or is iboga. I'm not sure. Have you have any experience with that or any research on that particular plant?
Yes. Yes. Iboga kind of depends on everything kind of divides into light dose or heavy dose. The effects kind of change. At a light or a moderate dose, plant people that I know use it to connect and commune with local spirits of the land. That's the description that they use. And an extract from the plant, ibogaine, is being used in Florida, I think, for addiction treatment.
Yeah, I've heard of it being used for addiction treatment.
And in very heavy dosages, it's the kind of thing you can wake up someplace that you've never been before and not being sure how you got there, like, somebody else's trailer or something.
Wow. So pretty intense stuff. Is what
Do you
you're
have a calendar? Can you tell me what day it is?
Wow.
Nice. I guess my frustration is with normal, I don't know if I call them, I guess regular society views plants and drugs as just totally a bad thing, and then you have shamans and medicine men and, people and, witches and people who use herbs, and they realize that plants are a sacred thing that have been put here to commune with the spirit world or to find out information that's important or for vision quests or, and then you have to deal with the split side of stupid society that's like, oh, you're on drugs and, that's the part about all this that frustrates me, especially with being in the South. It's like a prison with this stuff. If you get pulled over with weed, they go crazy. I got 5 years ago, the only thing on my jail record is once a disorderly conduct for something really dumb. And then once I got caught with one joint in Florida. I went to jail for one joint that they caught me with. I hadn't had weed in a long time. I finally got one joint after not having weed in a very time. Got some girl did something stupid and got us pulled over, and I had it, and I got caught with it. I went to jail. I had to pay a fine. I got out, and then the next thing you know, I had to pay this $300 fine, and I had to go to this class to watch this video, and it was like it said that marijuana would make men's breast lactate milk, and it had monkeys like drunk driving cars and stuff. I had to watch this stupid video just for one joint. So.
Well, yeah, and it's worth remembering that over half of all the people in prison, in federal prisons today, are there for drugs, and the majority of those are for marijuana. It was not so uncommon not too long ago to prison time for a couple of joints. That happened to Neil Cassidy, the hero of On the Road, Jack Kerouac's book. He went to San Quentin for 3 years, I think, for a couple of years. And I've known other who have done hard time for a couple of joints. It's kind of a new thing. They're just which plants and drugs are prescribed changes through history and through culture. There have been prescriptions against coffee, first in Egypt, where they would have big raids and raid places where people were drinking coffee, and there was a huge debate about whether it was forbidden by the Quran as an intoxicant, which went to a high ecclesiastical court, and in that case the coffee party won. I think the judge happened to be a coffee drinker. And much more recently in Germany, it was restricted. It was okay for the nobility to drink coffee. I think this was under Frederick the Great. But they would have police go around the town sniffing, they call them sniffers, to try and smell people brewing coffee, because it was against the law for commoners to drink coffee, as it was against the law for commoners to drink cocoa under the Aztecs in Mexico. So it's, it almost has a certain arbitrary nature to it. It's certainly not a scientific or a health. It's really hard. It's almost unbelievable that they could still be making health arguments at this point when there's been so much good science done, particularly on marijuana. And, LSD even, you can take 1,000 times the active dose and not die. And I don't think there's any other drug in the official pharmacy. If you look through the physician's drug manual, I can't think of anything else that has that large a therapeutic index. The therapeutic index is the ratio between the effective dose, what you need to take to get the effects, and the dose where half the people die.
Yeah. Well, the big thing now with marijuana and our cannabis oil or whatever is that there's cancer on some level, which I saw something about a Harvard study where it possibly did something with tumors in mice or something. I don't know how true it was, but
I didn't.
Go ahead.
I didn't see that one, but there was a study done a couple years ago where statistically it was more effective for Alzheimer's than either of the two official drugs on the market, which is interesting.
Definitely, and I know I saw Jesse Ventura, the governor and the wrestler dude. He was saying that I forget, it might have been on Bill Maher or something. I saw him on some talk show, but he was saying that the reason why marijuana was illegal was because it cured so many ailments that the pharmaceutical companies basically paid, the politicians or whatever to make sure that it stayed illegal. So that's one of the big reasons they don't want everybody growing it, because it can, it has so many positive attributes to it. So that's why one of the reasons why I believe it stays illegal is because these pharmaceutical companies would much rather some pill that, makes your rectum bleed and makes you get, seizures or whatever, all the crazy symptoms from pills that you hear on those commercials. They have to shut them off. They're like,
of course, it's in the industry's interest to push drugs that they have patents on. And they can't get a patent on this widespread cosmopolitan plant. It's probably not so interesting to them.
I think they're trying to.
that can happen. It's really hard to know, and the bizarre irrationality involved. I mean, some parts of it I think are a culture war. Just to at this point in particular, almost everybody who's doing time for marijuana is poor. I mean, growing marijuana is a big industry here in California, and in some other states too. I'd be surprised if there's not some such industry in Florida. But it's a big industry here, and I try to the quantities involved, a lot of people are smoking that plant. But the upper part of the population doesn't go to jail for it. It's only if you're poor and you can't afford a lawyer that you do time for it these days. So I look at it as, part of a general political and cultural and racial oppression. Again, people of color are doing a lot more time than white folks are.
Yeah.
We had an initiative on the ballot here in California that would broadly legalized marijuana in most cases, which did not pass. It did pretty well, but it didn't quite pass, and it didn't pass in the main grower counties, which really kind of bothers me. It's like the bootleggers were not happy with repeal. There's these huge vested interests now in that make their money from the black market drugs, not only marijuana, which is domestic, but also international cartels. One of the arguments to make cocaine against the law, which was used by black people, that was a part of it, like outlawing opium smoking was aimed at the Chinese. But there were stories that, it used to be in Coca-Cola, which from everything I can find out was an immaculately crafted soft drink. Just right. A very low dose just gives you a little pick-me-up for the afternoon. But some people would use it, and they would break into, the drugstores and or something. Anyway, so trying to solve that problem, we now have nuclear submarines doing interdiction and whole countries being held hostage by massively armed drug gangs. It just seems a little crazy.
Well, Dale and Jerry, we're about to go on break. I wanted to make one comment, and we're going to go on break for 10 minutes and then come back for the rest of another, I guess it'll be about 50 more minutes. I just saw the movie Savages by Oliver Stone, and it's about these hippie pot growers that, they're not both hippies, but they grow pot on a pretty big level, and then they get caught up in the cartel, and Benicio del Toro's in it, and John Travolta and a bunch of people, but I just saw that. It's called Savages with Oliver Stone. It was pretty excellent, and it was basically about these high-time weed growers. The cartel said, hey, you got to work for us, and of course things got insane. So definitely a good movie. But we're going to go on.
Yeah, I'm kind of the old school, have your own backyard medicine patch full of the medicinal herbs that you love and use.
Definitely. Sounds good to me. Well, let's take our 10-minute break, and then we'll be right back. So thanks for listening to UFO Paranormal Radio Network. And this is the Church of Mabus with Jeffrey Pritchett and Jerry Avalos and Dale Pendle. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Paranormal Radio.
Hear the truth.
Hiding from the spotlight. And the big, long, elongated red eye. In the hours of people, apparently and historically, opposed to secret society.
Shut down our government's defense system. Do you believe in
And we are continuing songs at the United States Air Force is withholding information from the general public on this subject.
The Church of Mabus.
Welcome back to the Church of Mabus, everybody. We're back with Dale Pendle, and we're talking about plants. And we got co-host Jerry Avalos. Next Saturday is Eugenia Macer story, and we're going to be talking about occult use with pirates and stuff, like black magic from pirates, like weird pirate stuff. It'll be a trip, trust me. And Beelzebub Alzarad will be co-hosting, if you remember him from one of the last shows we did. So that should be very interesting. And then Erica Ghosh is going to be co-hosting with me for the last show of the month with a girl and a lady named Stella about star children and stuff like that. So that should be pretty interesting. We're sitting around talking about pot, and I keep thinking of that Easy Rider scene with Jack Nicholson, and they're all smoking pot and talking about UFOs around the campfire and Easy Rider.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Classic scene.
Yeah, no, I associate UFOs more with LSD, actually. I mean, times I've glimpsed the mothership. It always happens when I'm alone and when I'm on acid. So what's the point when you come back to say, hey, I saw the mothership? Everybody's going to go, yeah. So, of course, it's always not clear with, lights in the sky. It may well be that it's the sky people climbing down through a hole in the sky. Loon Woman's brother climbing down a rope from the sky through a hole in the clouds.
Well, I'm Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I'm definitely not one to dismiss those kind of experiences when dealing with psychedelics by any means. Just to sum that up with my perspective, that's the next question I kind of wanted to get into. How do you feel about the shamanism perspective of plants? Like a lot of plants, there are particular beings or, beings, I guess, any type of spiritual being that presides as a gatekeeper or a guide for that particular plant. Like ayahuasca and stuff. I mean, I've heard of, people meeting with beings. And when I've done psychedelics in the past, I've seen some wild stuff. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It opens your senses to the spirit world. I remember doing psychedelics. Yeah, definitely. Doing psychedelics once in my house in Georgia. I think it was mushrooms. It was back in my wilder days, and I was just sitting in my room, and suddenly I opened my eyes, and there were Native Americans standing all around me in full dress garb like ghosts, and I freaked out and ran out of the house into the woods. It was just like they were all standing there around me. And, for instance, I know that I've read stuff from Terrence McKenna and seen his documentaries and things like that. I just want to know what your thoughts are on some of these beings that these plants seem to call forth when you take them. Are they guardians of, like, these other realms because the plants are like doorways or phones to these realms, so these beings are there to help guide you? What are your thoughts on that, shaman-wise?
Doorways is a good metaphor, and that's the central, the pharmaco books are, 3 or 4 things at the same time. It's part pharmacology, and they're used in pharmacology departments, actually, as texts. But it's also, and then in some ways it's like a social history. But the full theme and my own interest and what runs through the whole book is closest to what we call shamanism, and that is appropriate demeanor or stance, and how do you deal with these entities. And rather than spend a lot of time on the what we might say is the ultimate ontological status of such entities, we take a utilitarian approach. That is, how do you address them, and what kind of questions can you ask them, and what kind of information you get. Traditionally, with people who have lived with these plants for countless generations, a whole protocol has developed, generally with some respect and reverence, but also in shamanism particularly, there's a give and take. There's a diplomacy, like in tobacco shamanism, and tobacco is a central part of ayahuasca shamanism also, in its traditional setting. To get something, and it's usually you want to get information. Oftentimes you want to find out why somebody is sick, or why somebody is having a streak of luck, or even something very mundane like who stole my chicken. And the real skill in plant matter is in the what can I say, the trance state or the meta state in the magical sacred space of the plant spirits, how to behave oneself, how to call them particular spirits if you want them, which is usually done with a song, and how to get some information back from them. Like in tobacco shamanism, it said that gods on their side of the world like tobacco, but they don't have any. So the shaman smokes the tobacco, and then the gods on their side of the veil are able to get their tobacco that way. And then in exchange, by the way, I brought this tobacco to you, which you enjoy so much. While we're here together, there's a couple of things I would like to know. You know, what happened to my friend's luck? You know, why hasn't he been able to catch any fish lately? Or when did he lose his shadow so that now he has no energy and his back hurts or something like that? And they can actually, you know, you can get that information and then go do something about it. So there's a lot of interpretation at that. In the interpretation of an oracle goes back, you know, we find that in ancient Greece also. There's an interpretive aspect of it. So it's like poetry that way, which is the approach that I took. Let's treat this all like it's a big poem. And we'll create news and songs to bring out certain new aspects and feelings, and then with the aid of appropriate plants, this resonance can take a material form or an audible form, a visual form, you know, or even just a flash of insight. Oh, right, that's what it is. You know, to maintain diplomatic relations. I do stress that, you know, the nature of an ally, of course. The reason you want an ally is because the ally has power. Power, of course, is dangerous. If they didn't have power, why would you want them as an ally? But at the same time, you have to protect themselves. You know, certain allies, more than others, you know, maybe want more of you and more of your time. That might be good for other aspects of your life, you know, your family life and your job and all that sort of stuff. So I talked about two fields of shamanic skill that I call the solar medicine and the lunar medicine. The solar medicine has to do with your routines and your job and your responsibility, you know, or your children, your daytime life and your community, all of that stuff, which acts as kind of a beacon and an anchor, so that when you go off into the nether lunar realms to do the business there, it's easier to find your way back. We've all seen those who, you know, if you don't have a strong solar medicine, if you go too far off in the exploration of the lunar realms, you can become a wraith. and, sit around on the street asking for spare change or something.
Gotcha. All right, Jerry, got some questions there, buddy?
Yeah, actually, you had mentioned the expression of a lot of this in terms of poetry and kind of poetically putting things in day and night. I like that. And I was wondering if, how you were saying back in the beginning of the interview, you like to write while filling the plant. I'm sorry, and I was wondering, is that something that you kind of call back in your mind to spark more creativity later when, say, when you're not feeling the influence of the plant too? Is that there fresh in your memory, able to draw from that for your own creative purposes?
Yeah, two things. I'm a writer. I don't think I went so far as to say, I'd like to write. I mean, sometimes, but it's more of a discipline, and my approach is through poetry. Even though the pharmaco books don't really look like it, kind of if you scratch the surface, that's the technology and sensibility that I'm using. And it turned out to be a wonderful shield, sort of. That is, in poetry, you can explore a lot of areas and tell stories in ways which, if you literalize them, they can seem massively silly. But as a poetic story, it can make a great deal of sense and all kind of hang together.
Mm-hmm.
I would maintain that the poem may actually be true, So, to answer the second part of your question, poetry is really an oracular practice. Poets try to contact a voice. I think the poet Jack Spicer would agree with me here. A voice that's somehow beyond one's own. We could call it inspiration. We can look at divination as a continuum from maybe on the far left, where there's a total possession. African religion kind of bends that direction. And where the god actually takes complete possession of you, you speak in a different voice. Somebody writes down your words because when you wake up, you don't remember anything about it. So that's complete possession, where actually the god comes in and possession of your whole body and your voice. At the other end, which Cicero claimed was the pursuit of rational men, we have augury. Augury is the reading of signs. Which direction did the crow fly over? Was it from left to right or from right to left? And and that ties into the ancient concept of the doctrine of signatures. In some cases, it can be kind of silly. But if we take a more sophisticated view of reading signs, that's actually what we and science are about. It's what humans have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, and probably one of the things that makes us human is this reading of signs. And what I'm saying is kind of the middle ground, and the poet Robert Graves would agree with me here. The middle ground between complete possession, where we could also have automatic writing or channeling, and on the other side, the very rational reading of signs, which was a Roman skill. In between, in the middle, we could call it inspiration. It's like you're in touch with voice, another energy, but you're still there also as the kind of interpreter. You meet on the bridge, and deciding what to let through and just how to phrase it and how to interpret it is what we could call the art.
I like that. I like well spoken. You are a poet indeed.
So taking a poetic approach and looking at it as a poem and using poetic forms avoids this question of but is it real? Is it really real? But is it really, really, really real? Whereas you just can feel the temperature of water and swim around a little bit and try and come back with something useful or beautiful. Anyway, that was kind of the idea behind the Pharmaco project.
Very cool. And actually, okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Some of the chapters took longer than I expected. Some of these allies are kind of seductive. Like my cocaine chapter took about a year longer than I had budgeted for it. And so I try to record that too. The nature of the seduction, and how it can call. Richard Pryor had a great piece. The pipe calls, Richard, you're ignoring me. Richard, I'll make you happy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, or the wine bottle. I've been drinking wine every night, so I'm going to leave it in the cupboard tonight. And then it calls, hello? Are you forgetting something? Have you forgotten me? Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on addiction with all this stuff? I have a very addictive personality. I've been clean off cocaine and meth for 16 years, and my father was a kid. He told us if we ever did drugs, he'd kill us. Mm-hmm. And once he thought my brother was high, so he put a gun up to his face, and he was and then he died. So what did I do? I did a lot of drugs after he died. That was the first thing I did. I rebelled. But I've been clean off that stuff for 16 years, coke and meth, and now I'm fat. So if I did it, I'd probably be in the emergency room. So I haven't gone near it. But anything pot or pills and stuff I have trouble with. I have trouble with because of my addictive personality. I don't like pain, and I'm in a lot of pain a lot of times. So I'm subjectable to pot and pills that help you with pain. And I don't go crazy with them like Whitney Houston or Michael Jackson or something. my idea of going overboard would be taking 2 in a day or something. I don't like take 15 and, do crazy crap like that. But what are your views on addiction when it comes to this stuff from a shaman's perspective? I mean, people do get addicted, too, to this stuff, and it can go into a chaotic type situation.
Yeah, it depends on which plant or substance we're talking about. Cocaine and the opiates kind of have center stage with, see, there I go. I just started saying the common wisdom, which is not true. The most widespread addictions, of course, are tobacco and alcohol. And the most damaging. Far more people die from nicotine addiction than from all the illegal drugs put together. And alcohol's a bitch because it's around so much. I take my hat off to those in 12 Steps and other programs who are able to come up with a tremendous resolve and energy that it takes to clean up. It's like this hole, and the sides of the hole are real steep, and the fuckers put grease on it, out of it. I talked about that. It's in Pharmacodynamics. I have a chapter called Stealing from Tomorrow, which is about freebase cocaine, which is kind of astonishingly and supernaturally addictive. But addictions on a more subtle level, in some ways, chemical addictions are kind of straightforward. You know what the problem is, all you have to do is quit. So, if it's heroin or other opiate pills, if you have enough inner resolve, if it's become clear that it's making a mess out of your life and you got to get out of it, you can taper off if you have that kind of willpower. Not many do, or you go cold turkey. Every junkie has done that multiple times, sometimes in county jail. It's all doable, Then there's a stage after that, that's the initial cold turkey or cleaning up or getting off is just the first step. Then you've got to, probably you're going to have to move, because if you're around the same people and the same crowd, you're going to go back into it. It's a huge challenge.
And then they're just real quick. And then their cure is to put you on some other kind of drug to get off the drug. That's probably worse than drugs.
Well, yes and no. That's an interesting way. Certainly, that can work sometimes. Use one to get off of another, and then maybe it's easier to kick the one that you used. That's kind of that's a possibility. I was going to go on to stretch out on the idea of addiction, because I'm really interested in this, and like at an economic level, the whole world kind of now has an energy addiction. That is, if the price of oil and fossil fuels go up, or they get scared to cut down because we're setting fire to the air on our planet, hurts. And there's this kind of regression because we've, built up this dependence. People get dependent, if we want to use the word addiction loosely, to all sorts of behaviors. It can be gambling. It could be love, which I once quipped was as love, as in being in, is my drug of choice. Or computer games, or having to be on and, hitting a text bar with your thumb or something. It's very widespread, it's very subtle, and it's the great challenge to any medicine doctor is how to deal with that. The same way it's the great challenge for our culture as a whole, which I see kind of like in a, it's like a crack addiction, except that it's to growth and to more and more energy use. But I see a lot of the same dynamics going on, including denial.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the situation that the world's in right now, it seems like it's on the cusp of oblivion. I mean, politics and all that just seems hopeless, and there's so much stress in the world. It's like if people want to do drugs, just let them, as long as they're not hurting anyone, especially pot. That's my, the whole system's about to collapse, and if someone wants to smoke, let them, And I guess with addiction, I've suffered with it all my life, and I'm doing a lot better. Like I said, I haven't touched chemicals in over 16 years, except for, like pain pills. But compared to like meth and coke, I think that's you're a little better off with a Tylenol, codeine 3 than doing meth. That's for sure. But I guess. So, what are your thoughts on Terrence McKenna? Did you know him, or he's definitely a big icon in shamanism. I'm just curious to your thoughts on him and how he wrote the blurb for your book and all that stuff. How did that work out?
Well, Terrence was very kind to write the blurb. Of course, I knew him. When I started out on the project, writing the book, it was kind of a very small group. It was a much smaller group. There were a few international symposiums, which were just attended by small groups of people, and everybody knew everybody else. And you had to know those people in order to get some of these plants, and you had to go to interesting parts of the world. Things weren't these days. A lot of the plants that I talk about in the pharmaco books are available on the internet. Kind of amazing, and there's a huge repository of information, at arrowwid.org. But none of that was around back then. So, we all kind of knew each other, and like everybody else, I loved to listen to Terrence's stories.
Definitely. I've been to Arrowwood. I'll admit it.
Yeah,
a long time ago. Good site.
Good site.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Jerry, you got a question or so? We got about 15 minutes, so.
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of plants that I've done some research on, but haven't seen too much about. But I was curious if you had any experience or any research in particular on one of the common names of this plant is called a sun opener.
Oh.
It has like an interesting. It's like the botanical name.
Is that Hymea?
Let's see because it has a whole bunch of different. Hymea salicifolia. Wow.
Yeah, there's stories about Hymea having auditory properties. I've grown the plant, but I was never able to get much from it. I'm trying to think where I talk about Hymea. It's been a while. There were so many pointers in ethnographic reports, and most of them get repeated. Anyway, I've grown the plant. I didn't have a lot of success with it myself. But maybe I wasn't using it the right way.
That's cool. What about lion's tail?
Is that Leontis leonoris?
Yeah, that'd be the one.
Mm-hmm. I think I found that to be kind of a sedative. I collected a lot of these plants together in one little section. I think that's in Pharmacopoeia. I had kind of a grab bag chapter. It's a beautiful plant to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it's good to have a plant around for a while, and maybe it'll whisper to you in a state of reverie something about how to approach it. So have, of course, information from chemical analyses of these plants, which sometimes find things and sometimes don't.
What is it called? Lion's tail? Yeah.
Anyway, I found it relaxing, and I think the word that I used was clarifying. That is, it seemed to take a little bit of fog out of the air. It's a South African plant. I think they called it wild daga.
Yeah.
Being a term for marijuana. And it has phenolic compounds and some diterpenes in it. There may be something that we don't know about it yet. When I, was writing pharmacopoeia at that time, Salvia divinorum was not generally believed by the ethnobotanical set to actually have any. Well, they knew it was active somehow in some way, but nobody believed that it was active smoked. Though there was a report Mexican teenagers did smoke it, but Terence certainly didn't think it was active smoked. Greeted my own reports with a whispered placebo effect. But it just had to be approached with a little more patience, and it turned out to be quite spectacular, actually. Astonishingly spectacular, in that the chemist, wouldn't believe that a terpene could have that much power, that is, in microgram levels. Albert Hofmann and others that had screened the plant for alkaloids and not found any, and so therefore they thought the active ingredient, if any, must be unstable. But none of that turned out to be true. It was very clear to me that the plant was full of power. Now, that's a good example of a plant that needs to be approached in the proper way. Most of the commercial preparations these days, 5X, 10X, X, which was my terminology. That was kind of my invention, to enhance the leaves with an extract to make them stronger. But the doses are far too strong. That's a plant where, to work with it in a useful way, and for divination, I know of nothing better. You want a light touch, so the conversation can go two directions.
Where can you get that plant at?
Well, there's lots of commercial preparations available online at this point, and there are places that you can buy plants. I really recommend growing the plant.
Yeah.
That's the way to get to know it. The traditional use is to chew the leaves, which are very bitter. But that's really the way to get to know it. Kind of we might make an analogy we call the bridge of smoke and the path of the leaves is like, analogous to the difference between, drinking ayahuasca or smoking DMT. It's a very different approach. And with the ingestion, it kind of spreads out into a larger space where you can move around a little bit and say hello, stuff like that.
All right, we're down to about 5 minutes. I wanted to ask one question, and then we'll get you to give your links and stuff. What do you know about white sage that people burn? I burn a lot of it. You know, white sage, people burn it at spiritual stuff, and I guess I've seen them burned at funerals. But I'm, like, addicted to burning it. I annoy all my roommates. I burn it, like, not all the time, but too much, according to them. What does it do with white sage? What does it do exactly?
White sage? Well,
yeah.
White sage concentrates the power of the chaparral. And chaparral is this dry brush that grows in Southern California and down into Mexico some. We call it xeric. It's a drought-adapted ecosystem, and that power, which I think is clarifying. It gives this wonderful book to come back to the group. I would say white sage is a call. It's we use it to return to the circle. Come back to the circle. You may have been out between the stars, doing whatever you're doing, but at a certain time, it's time for the circle to come back together, and the white sage opens the space for that. If your circle is saying that you're doing it too much, well, you might listen to them.
Just slow down a little bit and make it more of a sacred experience. I'm always burning incense or white sage, and I remember one of my old roommates told me white sage smelled like armpits, and I didn't agree with that, but...
No. That's a different plant. I talk about that plant in Gnosis, a really interesting plant that I think I called it the corpse plant. It smelled so bad, but I did extractions with a number of different solvents, and one particular fraction that I got out of it was the real essence of armpit. I mean, this stuff was so bad, my wife wouldn't let me have it in the house. It was like, I didn't want it in the house. It was so powerful. It was like, one room would smell like a dead body, a decomposed corpse, and or like an armpit or something. It's, I couldn't help but being interested. Just because a plant that grows in gravelly soil with no nitrogen had that much power to produce amine.
Grim Reaper. Grim Reaper.
It's got to be good for something. And, I don't know what. I sell the extract to punks for stink bomb or something.
Well, we're at the tail end here. My idea of these plants and experimenting with them is exploring consciousness, and I'm sure you see that in a way as does Jerry. And a lot of people have trouble accepting that, and they just want to look at it as a...
Hey, look, it goes way beyond that. It's the foundation of consciousness. We could not live or have any consciousness without plants. Denying the plants is like to deny the earth and the whole food chain. the subtlest plants, and maybe the greatest hallucinogen is a plant like corn or wheat or something like that spreads this massively pleasurable sensation through your whole body, and it lights up this fire in the brain that makes you see. That's a hallucinogen.
Gotcha. Well, Dale, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I've enjoyed it tremendously. What are your site links where everybody can check out your sanctuary online, so to speak?
DalePendle.com.
All right, and that's DalePendell.com for all our listeners. And you can stop by there and check out Dale. And thanks, Dale, for doing the show. And Jerry, you got anything you want to say before we depart into the wild blue yonder?
No, just thanks for having me on. It's been great talking with you as always, and having a chat with Dale here. And if you want to check out me, you can go to who'slosewhatnow.com or check out projectcamelot.com or .org. I'm sorry, projectcamelot.org. And thanks again. It was a great conversation.
Cool. It was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend. Take care. Thanks. Make sure you check out churchofmabusradio.com. Lots of stuff going on there. Lots of weird interviews. Check it out. My Obama Reptoid interview with Art Greenfield, and my recent interview with Nick Redfern on Sherlock Holmes. So churchofmabusradio.com. You need to stop by there. Take care. Good night.